What up? What up? What up? What up? What up? Troy's group Think plus Chris and Melanie, the gang.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing outstanding. How are you?
Good, good. Just getting used to the new norm for the time being.
I know. Tell me about it. It's we're in some very interesting times, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We definitely are.
Well, you look great.
Thank you. I washed my hair today.
I actually shaved today too. I really haven't been shaving, and I had a beard for a little while, and now it feels good to be back to myself, you know?
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, washing the hair does make a big difference. I wash it and usually just don't blow dry it. So,
Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on groupTHINK. This is our third annual one. And it's been an exciting time to really kind of like speak to people from, all different sectors across multiple industries. And, I have so much respect for you. And I think that you are an incredible human being. And I just
well,
welcome
thank
you
you.
to our show.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for
You,
having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and talk to everyone here.
yes, talk to everyone. We're broadcast on YouTube as well, so this is going to grow and live. Our team member Chris, he has really kind of built something amazing, and we're just kind of like starting grassroots and getting some industry experts and some great thinkers, because what we're learning through this whole process is that people are looking for inspiration. People want to feel good. People want to hear and learn. And I think this would be a great little opportunity for us to share.
Well, yeah, and I think it's also really important to learn from each other, right? I think that based on other people's experiences, learning from them and maybe not making the same mistakes, for instance, that I've made in the past.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So let's dive into this. Jonna, for our audience, Jonna is the founder of Cali, and she has a lot of insight from being a CFO. She's also, launched the DDC feminine care category. And Jonna, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, so my background is on the CFO side. I once I graduated from grad school with an MBA with a specialization in finance, I went and started working at a medical diagnostic company as their director of finance, kind of really started to learn everything there is on the finance side, and then eventually pivoted to being the CFO of a hand tool company. So we did over $130 million in annual revenue. And it's fascinating looking back at my career path. I've always worked with entrepreneurs, whether it was the medical diagnostic company that was around 15 million in annual revenue to the tool company that was 130 million. And then I started to consult for other startups in different spaces. So for a private label frozen pizza company, which actually does a lot of the cauliflower frozen pizza that's out there, and other industries as well. And so during the time at the tool company, I kind of was not feeling fulfilled. And I think it's important for us to pay attention to that feeling inside that we are told to forget about. And I wasn't feeling fulfilled. So I started to look what else is out there and what I wanted to do. And I knew that there was this entrepreneurial side in me that I wanted to find what I wanted to start. I just didn't know what that was. And during that time, Dollar Shave Club was just blowing up. And a friend of mine had come to me and said, well, what do women need just like men need razors? I'm like, well, we need tampons. And so that's where the idea of Cali was born. And then, the rest is kind of history. We went through and found an angel investor and launched the company in 2016.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so you found an angel investor. For our audience, that don't understand about the raising of the capital, how much did you raise, if I may ask? And how did that happen? Walk us through that process.
Yeah, so my co-founder and I had this idea, and I said, let's write a business plan and I'll get us funded. And I think that money is easy to find. I think finding the right money and the right investor is a little bit more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as you continue to grow, what you're looking for in an investor might change. And I think it's important when you are looking to raise capital, you're looking for the right investor. And so realizing that within your team of what do you want? Do you want an investor that's just offering money? Do you want an investor that is actually going to help you grow the business? Do you want an investor that has certain specialties? What is that? Like, what is that gap in your, startup team, your founding team that you want to fill? If it's just money, that's okay too. And that's actually a lot easier to find than necessarily a strategic investor. And so we just went through initially through our own contacts, friends and family. And we pitched a lot and we had some offers from different investors, and we chose the one that we did because of what he was offering and his background. And so, our initial pre-seed round was $250,000. And from there, we were able to kind of test the market and really see if there was a product market fit, which is very important, I think. Looking in hindsight, I think I would have just raised all the capital all at once, because I think it's a lot easier to raise a lot more before you can put a valuation on your business. Once you have sales, now you can create a valuation, right? So I think there's a give and take during that process.
And so, just to dive a little step further, was your investor difficult?
My investor wasn't difficult. He was a very kind, generous man. It's also fascinating when you're meeting with different investors because everyone looks for different things, right? He actually looked at our profiles on Facebook and Instagram, wanted to understand the type of person we are, right? Because a lot of investors talk about, you can have an okay idea, but really great founders, and that okay idea can be worth a lot. You can have a great idea and terrible founders, and it doesn't go anywhere. It just crashes and burns. So we had other investors that really kind of like highlighted our entire business plan. We had a lot of different scenarios when it came to what was important for an investor. So our investor really cared about who we were as people. And, you also don't know the unknown. Right when he initially took on our project, his wife was really pushing him to retire. So he went on his boat and, sailed around the world when we really needed a lot of help. And, and so there was no fault there. It was just kind of what happened.
Yeah. And so, being that your investors sailed around the world, so for many that don't know, would you suggest that people should get a strategic investor to really kind of like work with them through start to finish?
I think it really depends. I see the positives and negatives of both sides. For us, we were able to make mistakes, learn from them quickly. We really had enough rope to hang ourselves. And so that was great. I think that, the negative of that is that, we didn't know what we didn't know until, having our startup for a couple years and realizing where those gaps were. And, hiring people to fill those gaps is a lot more expensive in some capacity with capital, but maybe not with equity. So it's really a subjective type of scenario. It really depends on what you're looking for. And I think that's why it's so important for a startup founder to, one, know right when you start your business, before you've raised capital, what type of investor you want. What does your exit strategy look like, right? Are you looking to build a mom and pop? Are you looking to, have $100 million, exit plan? How quickly? And then you can back into what do you need to get there? And a lot of that might come from your investor and what you're looking for in that piece. Is it, a VC fund? Is it an angel? Is it maybe you want to hire a co-founder that maybe has capital and you don't? And so there's a lot of different ways you can kind of look at it.
Okay. And, I love this topic of investing. For all the women that are listening right now, what advice would you give a female founder?
I think being confident. I think that men in a room are able to just have this different level of confidence. And unfortunately, just the way that the industry is in general, a lot of the questions that women receive opposed to men are very different. You know, based on some of my friends that are men in the startup community, they're asked, oh, okay, like what's your growth strategy? And on the female side, the questions are more like, well, how are you going to mitigate that risk? So I think that we could sit here all day and say, oh, this is unfair. But you got to know your audience, and you just have to kind of accept where things are and help pivot that by being prepared.
Yeah, I understand that. And so most men are probably not comfortable talking about feminine care products, and their only experiences when they're with their wife or girlfriend asked to pick them up. You know, what was an added layer to your investor pitch for that?
I would just throw a bunch of tampons on the table. And we just kind of talk about it.
So tell us about that. Like, what did your investor say? Like, how did he feel when he saw that?
Felt a little uncomfortable. A lot of the questions that, would come up were, I guess there was a lot of uncomfort in the room, but I usually was able to use a little bit of humor, talk the numbers, get really excited about the business and just the overall plan. And I think it was all regarding our delivery. And so I think that really helped a lot. But, at the end of the day, our whole business model is based around, why can't periods be humorous? Why can't this be more of a comfortable topic? And so talking about it more and more with investors, with our audience, I think we were able to do that.
I've noticed on your social media channel, your content is very humorous. How is that received? I think it's really incredible. Like I've only bought tampons for my girlfriend one time, right? And I was like, I had to text her like, what do I do? Where am I going? Yeah. And so as a guy, that was very uncomfortable for me too. But I think it's something that all men should be understanding on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the humor brings light to the topic, right? And I think that when we initially started, we didn't really lead with that messaging. And as we continued to evolve as a company, we started to, and we were a little nervous. We're like, how is this going to be received? Are people going to take offense to it? And, sometimes you're not going to make everybody happy. You're just not. And so I think that if you really focus on what you believe in, and if that's a really strong belief system, I think that you're going to find that right audience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And so for the person who is thinking about starting a company right now, is there anything that you didn't think about that you wish you had?
I think it's really important to really understand, if you are going to have a co-founder, what that looks like. I think that people underestimate, friendship and having a co-founder relationship is really hard. I learned a lot about the things that I needed to improve on as a co-founder, along with, what could have been different through that whole process. And I think a lot of people also underestimate how long it takes for a startup to succeed. A lot of us are like, oh yeah, let's start a startup and let's, sell it in 3 years. Well, typically it's a 7-year plan. And, typically you don't raise enough money. You make mistakes with, the initial money that you actually get as investment. So I think that those are really important things to think about. And, what your end game is.
And so is there anything that you did that you wish you tackled in a different way?
Well, because we raised again in 2017. So I think I would have raised more initially. You also have to understand, like, sometimes you don't know what's going to happen. Like, we didn't think that tampons and sanitary pads were going to become really chic and cool, because a lot of companies started popping up.
Yeah.
And then also being able to, I think it's really important. And I think we got a lot better at this throughout the years, but pivoting, right? If something's not working because you're a startup, you have this opportunity to be able to pivot quickly. You don't have all this red tape like a corporation does that you have to go through, 5 people to get approval. Just change it, change it and try something different, Yeah. And I think that as long as you can be open to that and realize that you don't know everything, ask people for help, ask for support, and, really kind of releasing that ego. I think ego is what actually, not having enough money and ego is why there are so many failed startups.
Yeah, I know all about the ego thing, with my co-founder and I've really had to make adjustments with that as we go through this COVID-19 transition. So thank you for speaking about that. I think a lot of people forget that ego will destroy your company.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. And so explain to me what sets Cali apart from the other tampon brands on the market.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we didn't really want to be a commodity-based business, right? Like when we started this business, I was going through my own kind of spiritual awakening. I was looking at what I was eating. I wasn't eating farm-raised salmon. I was having this own kind of awareness about all of the products that we were using. And we were always taught when we were younger that these corporations were doing what's right for us. And then we kind of have evolved to start questioning all these things. And for us, I mean, I was on this spiritual journey, but had no idea what was in my tampon. I was still using a toxic tampon. And I thought, how many other people out there are doing the same thing? And so that's where the idea started. But then we started realizing that nobody likes going to the store and buying sanitary products. It's not like you're, jumping for joy, like, oh yeah, I get to go buy my tampon. So we were trying to figure out how do we create that excitement, right? How do we create that excitement about this product that has just been around forever? And so we started our own kind of luxury products, pampering products, a rosewater facial mist, an essential oil blend that is really, really great on the skin, a salt bath, and then also a coconut sugar scrub. And then we started realizing, well, we have all these other kind of partnerships that we love. Why not include those in the box as well and start educating our customers about the chemicals that are in some of these other products that we might be using and really introducing them to some really great brands. So, we've partnered with over 150 brands to be able to provide that in the box every month. So we've gotten a lot of feedback that people are excited to get that box every month because there are all these surprises. So it's kind of like the hybrid of, tampons and kind of like a birch box for tampons.
Okay, great. So let's just, shift gears for a minute. On a personal side, how are you managing living day to day during this very unusual time in our lives?
I think it's really about acceptance, right? Accept the things that we cannot change and really being able to be adaptable and shifting, what our days look like and continuing to stay productive. But I think it's a great moment for all of us to take a step back and look at what is important. What do we really want? I have a book club and it was fascinating. The book that we picked in January was A Man's Search for Meaning. And it is all about this man's experience in the Holocaust and in concentration camps.
Yeah.
And how he was able to survive that. And he actually created a therapy called logotherapy, which is that people survive in hardship because of meaning. And so reading that book, and we did our book club on Zoom, and we were all kind of thinking, well, we have a roof over our head. We have food on our table. Other people are even struggling with that right now. We're not in a concentration camp. So trying to take this opportunity as a pause and looking at it from a positive perspective and seeing like what opportunities are going to open from, this terrible time.
No, I think, that is such a incredible book as well. I remember my good friend, Debbie, who lives in London. When I lived in London, she gave me that book. So I read that book about 3 years ago, and it's such a phenomenal read, so that I completely understand that book. It's just mind blowing that you spoke about that book and you had a book club about that. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really great. And I mean, I think that all of us, it is a tough time. And so remembering those pieces of gratitude, even if it's, having a cup of coffee with your family in the morning, those little things, and remembering that can kind of reduce that negative voice in your head. And I think we need to be kind to ourselves during this time. It's really easy to say, okay, when I'm done with, this quarantine, I'm going to have a book written and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. Right. But sometimes, I'm helping my sister with my nieces in their school. Sometimes it's just, being able to spend that time with family and getting through the day.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And so what are you doing for yourself? You were speaking about the spiritual journey. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of reading a lot, understanding everyone's perspective, being open to, any type of shifts I'm having within myself. I think that I've been working on myself since I was, like 19. We've talked about this, but I'm in recovery from an eating disorder. I've been in recovery now for almost 20 years. I run an eating disorder recovery group with Nikki from Now Wellness. She has her studio based in New York. We're actually doing it on Zoom now, which has been great because on average we were getting around 20 people every time we have our recovery group. And now it's up to almost 30 because we're able to meet with people all across the country, which is great. And so, I think that's kind of how it's just continued to evolve and reflecting on myself and how I can grow and be better. And I think that all of us as a community should think about doing that as we are going through this whole process. So we all kind of step out as better people, right?
No, I couldn't agree more. And that's the one thing that I'm working on every single second, to be better, to really, release a lot of things and come out on the other side as an incredible human being. So kudos to you and your group that you guys are doing. And so your background is in finance, but as you shifted to launching your own company, what about the feminine care space keeps your fire going?
Well, I think it's really about improving and educating, improving the lives of our customers and educating our customers about something that they might not have thought of. I think that is really what drives me, and empowering our customer base and being able to, share that you're able to start a business. For me, I was really heavily, my background was operations and finance, and that is very helpful in the startup space, right? But the key to success is sales, right? And so I had to learn a lot. I feel like it was a secondary MBA of, when we started our business, we turned on our website and I thought all these people would flock, and it was tricky. I was like, wait, what's wrong here? Why is it not working? And then I had to learn what SEO is, what PPC is, and learning that, you might have a beautiful website, but if nobody knows where to go, you're not going to get any sales. And so I think it's unbelievable how much you learn. But there's also a piece of that I think brings up, and I've talked about it with a lot of startup founders, is you feel like a failure a lot, right? Because you don't have this massive team yet. So you're forced to do a lot of things that you're just not good at, and understanding and learning what you are good at and what you're not good at. So then when you can eventually build a team, you're able to hire people to do the things that you're not good at. But, I do think that kind of feeling of failure is something that all of the startup founders that I've talked to deal with on a regular basis, and being able to talk about it with a like-minded group, I think is very important.
No, I completely understand that. I remember, with Melanie and she would spend hours with me, kind of like educating me, because I'm not good at a lot of things that she's good at. And she would drill me like, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. So I completely understand it. And I hated every minute of it. But what it did was make me a better founder.
Right.
And so as we continue to go deeper, How much upside is there for the feminine care business, both right now and post COVID-19?
Well, the space is massive. It's $4.6 billion in the US alone. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity there. All of the startups that are in the space, I think we're all on the same side of the table, and we're really kind of working to pivot consumers from buying from these archaic products that have been on the shelves for a really long time. And I think the opportunity is there for all of us to thrive. And I do think that there is a lot of opportunity in the retail space. I think retailers are starting to realize that, consumers are looking for healthier products for their bodies. And I also think that delivery is going to continue to go on, right? And so I think that as we kind of step out of COVID-19, I think that people are going to still think about what they can have delivered and, eliminate that chore from, going to the store.
Okay. I read an interesting article on CNBC that if you have SHA, which is health savings account, or FSA, which is flexible savings account, for the first time in history, you can use these funds for feminine care products. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. It was something that my girlfriend, Erin Clampett, and I have talked about so many times. She's on the insurance side, and we were just like, how can we do this? And we actually tried to figure out ways to be able to accomplish that. And we just kept hitting roadblocks. And so I think that is one of the positive things that has come out of COVID-19, right? And I think we're going to see more of that.
Okay. And also, I read a really incredible article a few days ago. As you know, I'm a founder, I have launching a skincare company.
Yep.
And I'm constantly studying and constantly sharing information with my co-founder.
You study more than anyone I know.
Thank you. It's a journalist in me. And
yeah.
So I'm constantly studying and exchanging information with my co-founder. And I read a great article, and it said that the feminine care DTC companies are fucking booming right now. And, what do you think about that? And do you think women are going to go back to brick and mortar to purchase their products once this is over?
I think that when we started this business, we really didn't think about the process of shifting human behavior. And that is one of the hardest things to do in any space, in any industry. And so what we did not realize is convincing someone to come to a website and pre-buy tampons was shifting human behavior, because our consumer doesn't like to pre-buy tampons, and they get their period and then they go to the store. And so we were having this challenging time with that onboarding process. But once somebody did sign up for our products, they loved them and they loved the convenience of it. So we knew that there was something there. What happened now with COVID-19 is everybody is hoarding a lot of things, just in case, because it's that feeling of scarcity that comes up, which is backed by fear, which, as you know, there's a lot of fear out there right now. And so that actually pivoted human behavior instantaneously. I mean, look at what happened with toilet paper.
Yeah.
So,
and continue. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. So it's fascinating that something like this is what created that change, which we've been trying to do for a really long time.
Okay. And what are you hearing about the retail landscape? What are you hearing? Like, what's going on? What's happening?
I think that there is a shortage of sanitary products. And so there are a lot of retailers that are looking to actually have more product within their retail spaces. So, and also other retailers that aren't necessarily selling products like that, looking into getting into more of the commodity products in order to be able to survive during this time and when we come out of it.
Right.
And so that's what I've seen.
And once the world opens back up, how do you see your business changing?
I think that a lot of D2C companies throughout the years, D2C has been so sexy and everybody wanted to start one. And, then unfortunately, the industry just became saturated with digital marketing spend, and a lot of companies just can't survive. I mean, if we're if you have an LTV of $200 and you're spending, $180 buying a customer, yeah, you're grabbing market share, but you're not growing profitably. And so I think a lot of these D2C companies have had that experience and are continuing to be on this hamster wheel of raising. Now a lot of the capital is kind of on hold. So I think a lot of companies that were on that growth model are going to have a really challenging time getting through this time. And I do think that, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. No, but I do think that as we kind of go through this whole process, people are going to want to go back to retail. And I think that these companies need to look at the retail channels because D2C is just so expensive. And I think people initially thought that it was going to be cheaper, but because so many companies opened it up, it's actually become more expensive than getting into the retail side. And a lot of people say retail is dying, retail is dying. I think retail is changing. I don't think retail is dying.
Yeah.
And I do think a lot of these D2C companies are starting to kind of try to pivot into that retail space.
Yeah. I watched an incredible documentary about Aristotle Onassis, and they were saying, obviously he was a shipping magnate, and they were saying how back in the day, shipping was dead, and everyone told him he was an idiot for buying all these ships. Right. And after World War II, he bought every ship that he could possibly imagine, and he created his wealth, and he looked at all his friends. He was like, I told you so. And so that's my whole thought about retail. I, listened to this webinar yesterday with the CEO of L'Oreal, and he was talking about retail as well. And retail is not dying. It's not going anywhere. We just have to rethink what it looks like. So,
yeah, I agree with that 100%.
And so as we continue, please, I'm a novice and I don't understand anything about the tampon world, but for those who are listening, can you tell us a little bit about your manufacturing process from start to finish? Because this is fascinating.
Yeah. So, believe it or not, there aren't a ton of manufacturers in the organic tampon space. I think that what people don't realize is that when you're using a toxic tampon, the tampons are made out of cotton, and cotton has a ton of pesticides used on all of the crops just because there's so many different bugs that actually try to eat cotton. And so what ends up happening is when it goes through the cleansing process and when it's a toxic tampon, it is mixed with rayon and different additives. So there could be fragrance in there, which is like very, a lot of people have sensitivities to fragrance. There's the pesticides, there's dioxin, it's with chlorine bleach is why it's kind of cleansed the way that it is. And so the typical tampon, which there aren't very many factories, have all of those things in them. And because the FDA, and we don't know if this is going to change, but because it's a class 2 medical device, companies are not required to disclose what's in their products. And so when you're looking at the back of a box of tampons, you're not going to actually see what's in those products. So companies like mine are disclosing that information to our customers. And I think that that's where it really needs to start. I think it's important for customers to have that choice. So when you look at any other product, the majority of products, you see what's in them. So let's say you're shopping for a deodorant, and there are a lot of organic deodorants out there. And then there's also the toxic ones, but you get to make that choice as a consumer. You see what's in the toxic deodorant, you get to see what's in the organic deodorant, and you get to make that decision for yourself. In the tampon space, we've never been able to make that decision. So third parties have actually come in to test a lot of these toxic tampons to actually educate people what's in them. And so that's where the pivot kind of occurred. In 2016, the messaging started to kind of evolve, and there was more awareness in the space. And then, and then here we are today where there are a lot of companies that are manufacturing organic tampons.
And with this space, who's doing it right in your opinion? Like, who's really doing it right?
I would say Cora is doing a very good job. I really like what they're doing. I do really like the idea of Thinks. I think that Thinks is, a hybrid. I've heard a lot of women talk about that they use our tampons, and then they also use Thinks instead of using a panty liner. So you are thinking about the environment. I think that.
Can you elaborate a little bit on Thinks? Because I was reading a little bit about it and I wanted to be educated more thanks to you. So please tell me a little more about Thinks.
So Thinks is a period underwear. And so they have specific technology. And actually now there's several companies out there. There's Dear Kate. There's several, I think Sustain is also doing period underwear. And so it's a type of underwear that actually can soak some of the, the menstrual blood, and it doesn't actually leak. And so depending upon which one you buy, it can carry a certain amount of, of the blood.
And I think, what's really cool about this conversation is that, as a founder, you have so much respect for the other founders. And, I've heard about Core before, so I know all about that brand. So that's good that you can credit other founders and say, like, wow, they're doing it right. So that's really cool.
Well, yeah, I think it's important. I think that, like I said before, we're all on one side of the table, and we're, facts. Trying to compete with, the big corporations that are choosing not to educate customers on what's in their products. Yeah. And, so yeah, I mean, I completely value what other companies are doing and their messaging. And like I said, I think the space is big enough for all of us to succeed.
Yeah. It's fucking $4.8 billion worth of space. So yes,
I know,
it is.
Yeah. It's definitely big enough for all of us to succeed.
And so what are some innovative ways that companies can look at getting into new spaces that won't be perhaps as risky as they used to be?
I think that sometimes, people that want to start a business are trying to create a brand new product and invent something. And sometimes you just have to look at archaic industries and figure out how you can make them better. We don't always have to reinvent the wheel. I think that there are so many opportunities across the board where we can create a better experience or create a better product. And it doesn't need to be, just a brand new invention. And I think that sometimes can hinder people from wanting to do something. For us, we looked at the space and, we analyzed what was going on, and we found a manufacturer. And for us, we started with cardboard tampons, and we both actually were raised with cardboard tampons. So we didn't really think much of product market fit at the time. We're like, oh, everyone's going to just use this. And we had a couple people test it out and we got positive results. And so we launched with only cardboard tampons. Well, before that, we didn't realize that 60% of women use tampons and 40% use pads. From that 60% of tampon users, 90% want a plastic applicator. And so for us, when we launched, we wanted to reduce our carbon footprint. So we really wanted to stick to cardboard. But if you have a business and 90% of the tampon users wanted a different product, how is that going to work? And so that was a really big challenge for us to find another manufacturer to offer plastic. And then we were also looking at doing a biodegradable plastic. And so that was something that really could be a big opportunity as well. However, once researching that more, biodegradable is kind of a marketing gimmick in some capacity, because in order for something to actually biodegrade, it has to have a certain amount of water, a certain amount of soil, a certain amount of sunlight for it to actually biodegrade. So if it's going into a landfill, if you're throwing that into the trash, it's actually not going to biodegrade. It's the same as plastic.
And so you said something that, with 44 years of life, I still don't know. What is the difference between a tampon and a pad? As men who are listening, what is the difference?
Yeah. So a tampon is inserted inside your body.
Yes.
In order to, keep you protected during that time of the month. And a pad is actually something that goes on top of your underwear. So, when you're on your period, as your body is releasing blood, it's being collected in the pad. So it's outside of the body opposed to inside of the body.
Well, thank you very much for this, because the Gen Z and the millennials that some guys don't know, these are questions that guys don't know. And so I'm not ashamed to answer this question. So thank you very much for.
No, you're welcome. I'm totally comfortable explaining it to you.
Yeah, me too. And so as we continue to, dive in there, it is intense to start a business, and it's intense to do this business in an environment such as this. Are you approaching, what are you approaching as we move through this, like for your business, and what ideas may you have for other founders as they move through this? What's a good approach to think differently?
I do believe a lot in collecting market data. So if you do have a good customer base, I think it would be great to do a Survey Monkey, ask for, you'd be surprised how many people will actually fill out a survey, especially if you're doing some type of a giveaway. So they have the opportunity to win some product. We've done that quite a bit because our messaging is very important to us to know what our customers want, right? And we want to make sure that we're constantly providing what they're looking for and asking for. And so I think a lot of founders take that for granted. And you'd be surprised how many people, if you give them the opportunity to tell you what they're thinking, will be honest with you.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
Yeah.
And so I love this question. What gets you out of bed?
What gets me out of bed? Other than my alarm clock. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, honestly, just living life and continuing to build companies and do things that make me feel good every day. And it seems like a very simple response to that answer, but I think we tend to forget, especially during this time, it's such an opportunity to stop doing things that you don't like to do. And figuring out ways to fill your time up with more things that you like to do, if you want to bring it to as simple as possible. And so that's what I've been doing more of. And whether it's projects or people or what I'm reading, spending time with family, I think that's really what I'm kind of working on right now.
That's amazing.
What are the next steps?
Yeah, likewise. And so here's another question that was sent to me. What do you think is the difference in raising capital for a female founder versus a male founder?
So like I said, you do have to know your audience. I've had a lot of, it's unfortunate because the industry and raising capital hasn't changed that much. I have one really good friend who has a very successful brand, and she was trying to raise capital. And when she was going into these meetings with a bunch of VCs, they kind of listened to her. She had really good connections. So they did take the meeting, and she really heard nothing back. And then she brought on a co-founder that was a male and was a Wharton grad, and went into the same meetings with the same deck and got funded. So, that's just an example of where we're still at. We have a ways to go, but I think it really is being confident and, walking into the room as a female founder and really knowing your numbers and not second guessing what you're doing. And I think it's also important to know who you're meeting with and, creating boundaries around that. Unfortunately, as a female, you might get asked, to meet in maybe uncomfortable situations. Like I would never take a dinner meeting. I wouldn't take a drink meeting. I just wouldn't, I just really stuck to, specific business meetings, or meeting for breakfast is always a good one. So I think that was my experience. Raising capital this secondary round has been a little more challenging. It's funny because a lot of people say it's easier to raise 10 million than it is to raise one.
Yeah.
And it's because you've already gone through, I think that, there are stages. So, getting from, your initial startup phase to hitting past, 15, 20,000 monthly revenue, then to hitting past the $1 million mark of annual revenue. There's a lot that happens in between, right? And so I think, especially in the space that we're seeing now, I think that investors are going to be a little more cautious of what companies they're investing in. And I think that the companies that are, in a good capital position now are the ones that are going to be able to get through this process. And I do think that investors are going to look at companies in a different way. And I think that they're going to really want to start investing in companies that are growing slower, but profitably, right? Because that's a sustainable business. I think the days of, females and males going into raise capital and saying, oh my God, our growth rate is at 120% month over month. And, we just need to raise 30 million so we can keep up with that. I think those days are going to be behind us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And so, I love the topic of brick and mortar, D2C. Would you ever want to open a Cali store one day?
I don't know. I think that's interesting. I think that we would be open to doing pop-ups. We've done a pop-up in the past. I think that there could be a lot of opportunity when this kind of quarantine time and is over. And once we get past COVID-19 to some extent, I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for pop-up spaces that are not necessarily just a store, but we're seeing all these like experiences, right? And so an experiential experience, I think, is important. Winky Lux, Natalie is one of my friends, the founder. They've done an amazing job with pop-ups, and they do pop-ups for a certain period of time. So like 3 months or so, depending upon where they are.
And so can you walk us through one of your most successful pop-ups?
So we've only done one.
Okay.
So
I didn't know. Yeah, good. Thank you.
We did one in New York. It was within another store. It was very cool. We did a really good job. I think the way that we looked at it is we really wanted the success of that pop-up wasn't necessarily onboarding subscribers. It was more about partnering with a lot of the brands that we had partnered with on the box or in the box, and having different experiential events. So we got to meet a lot of our customers. It was really, really great. It was very rewarding. And we got to learn a lot about what their opinions were, what they wanted to see more of, because we were trying to figure out as well, like, what type of products do our customers want to see in the box? Did they like the deodorant? Did they like the face wash? Like what brands are they really kind of resonating with? So we really like the experience a lot.
Okay, great. And, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
I would tell my 18-year-old self to not be so hard on myself. I think we're all too hard on ourselves. There's a book called Untethered Soul, and it actually talks about that negative voice that you have in your head. We all have it, tells you that you suck if you're not waking up at 4:00 in the morning, it's like you suck. And so that voice gets very loud, and the more you try to avoid that voice, the louder it gets. And I think that once you embrace that voice and that shadow side, and just talk back to it and just allow to be kind to yourself. I think that that's the advice that I would give.
That's beautiful. And before we, stop, what books are you reading right now?
Right now, I'm reading a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza.
Okay.
So I had read it before, but I got stuck on the meditation piece. And so I'm restarting that book. And I just finished a book called Letting Go, which is by Dr. Hawkins. He has another book that I've read in the past. And that's it right now. Yeah, that's it. I need to get some more books, but I need to finish it. What about you? What book are you reading right now?
Well, currently right now I am reading a book by Dr. Claude Bristol, The Magic of Believing. And that book is really, it was written in 1945. And so what I've been doing through this whole process is going back into the old days. I watched a really incredible documentary on the history of Toyota. And I've just been really studying the past because they've gone through so many things and we're here in this process and we have to learn from the past. And so that book was written in 1945 and is just one of the most profound books that I've ever read. It's just really about the mind and emotional intelligence and really believing yourself and really letting go of emotions and things, but continuously keeping your mind sharp, because that is what plays tricks on us, our mind. And our mind, as you said, would tell us crazy things. And I was very fortunate at a young age that I learned how to train my mind very early on. So a lot of things don't attack me. And so it's a pleasure that you are working on yourself as well. And I think all of us through this process, we need to be doing that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the more of us that are doing it and the more that we all talk about it, it's all about community.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. That's interesting. And I did watch a documentary on the Spanish flu.
Yes, I've seen that one. Yep. Mm-hmm.
You have? Okay. It's interesting.
It's very interesting. There's a lot of interesting things that are coming out that are out right now.
Well, history repeats itself, right?
Like my grandma used to say, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. We are definitely repeating history.
If you get a chance, there you can on Google, you can see images of how chic these people were, and they wore masks in the 1918 during the Spanish flu.
Oh,
they were so chic and their masks were so cool.
And what I found super interesting, the only reason why it's called the Spanish flu was because Spain was one of the few countries that was not in the war. And so they were completely open about talking about how bad it was.
Yeah, no, true. One more documentary, I would suggest everyone who's listening, it's the oil standard documentary. And
that one is really good.
It's a fascinating documentary about the Rockefellers and how they built what they built. It's quite fascinating, people.
Yeah.
Well, Jonna, thank you very much for your time. Again, I'm so sorry. I keep forgetting to ask for questions, but I would do better on our next Zoom 004, which is Friday. So, Jonna, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Stay safe and be cool.
Yes. Hopefully see you soon.
Yes. Cheers.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.